He wore me down with others, and so I guess I get to share with you what happened to me at Skinwalker Ranch. So this is nerve-wracking. I haven't really shared this publicly at all. To a point I have, but with everything that's being shared at this conference, it makes it a lot easier for me to share this with you. I went out to, I had heard about Skinwalker Ranch initially from a man that I became friends with. He goes by Alien Dave Rosenfeld. And he is the creator of the Utah UFO Hunters. So he had a group of people that he would take out on sky watches and whatnot to kind of look for UFO activity and whatnot. It fascinated me. And we met at a MUFON meeting, and they were profiling Skinwalker Ranch and the book by George Knapp and Colm Kelleher. So in talking about the book, that's not what I was supposed to do, I approached Dave. I mean, he's called Alien Dave, right? He should know something about it. So I said, will you take me out to Skinwalker Ranch? And he said, yes, he would. And he said, have you ever had any experiences out in the Uinta Basin? Have you ever even been out there? And I went, well, yeah. My uncle and aunt lived out here for a long time. My cousins grew up here in Roosevelt and Vernal. And so I spent many summers out here, helping my aunt take care of, she adopted 2 sets of twins within a year and a half of each other. Woo, crazy, but anyway. And so she needed a lot of help. And so I went out and helped her in the summers and worked out in the yard and did laundry and all these things. And I didn't even really connect that the things that I experienced when I was younger had anything to do with anything else out here. And so these ones were a little harder to share too, but there was one summer, my aunt, I had a fever. I think I was running like 104. And I think I was like 7 or 8 years old. And she took me, she said, get in the car. And I'm like, are we going to the doctor? Are we going to the hospital? What are we doing? She said, no, we're going to Bottle Hollow. I'm like, what's okay? So she put me in her, it was like a tan minivan from what I can remember. And we went to Bottle Hollow and she stuck me in the water. It was freezing. And I thought, okay, she's trying to lower my temperature. It's fine. I was in there for like 5 minutes. Came out, before I had been throwing up, had a fever, lethargic, came out feeling perfectly fine. No fever, it was gone. I was fine. And I was like, what happened? Don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. Okay, so I just didn't ask any more questions after that. And then there was an incident in one of their houses in Roosevelt. My uncle had a German short-haired pointer he named Dog, or he called him Doji. I don't know if you remember Doji, Courtney, but he had him in a dog run out behind his house. And there was kind of like sagebrushy hills behind his property, and I went out and I let the dog run. When he was at work and Aunt Mary was shopping or something, and I went and let the dog run on that hill behind the house. And I remember being out there one day, and the dog's running, and then all of a sudden he did what those like bird dogs do. They stop and they point at something. And I was like, what are you looking at? And I saw pretty far away, had to have been 300 to 500 yards away, was somebody standing there. And it looked to me like they were 6 foot tall, but they would have had to been much taller at that distance. So there was somebody standing there, and I didn't hear a voice out loud. I didn't hear anything said to me, but I was staring at this thing on the hill, and the dog just was like catatonic. I'm like, what, Doji, are you, like, he wouldn't move, like at all. It was like somebody pushed pause on the dog. And when I looked at this being, all I heard was, not here to hurt. And I was like, what does that mean? And then the next thing I know, which, again, I didn't correlate this to things that happened later, my aunt woke me up on the couch. I have no recollection of putting the dog back in the run and getting back in the house and laying down on the couch. None. I have no idea how long that was. And so I just kind of pushed that memory to the back of my mind. Like, oh, did I dream this? I'm like, no, I can see that I let the dog out. Like, I know I did that. But that was just kind of the 2 experiences I had when I was younger that I didn't think about until much later when I was able to revisit the ranch. And like I said, my aunt always told me to discuss it. She was a teacher out here, and so with a lot of the Native Americans, they don't like to talk about this kind of stuff. They feel like you invite it if you talk about it. And she didn't want to invite it in, and so I just never brought it up again until I was introduced to that book at the MUFON meeting, and I went, okay, there is something happening out there. I really want to go and see it. I knew that it was privately owned. I read the book. I knew that Robert Bigelow had owned it at the time. And it was like nearly impossible to just go, hey, I'd like to come and I talked to him. And it was basically the same sentiment, like, we don't just allow people to go onto the ranch. So I asked Dave if he would take me, and he said he would, but we couldn't, we weren't trespassing, let's just say that. We didn't go onto the ranch, we went onto the border of the ranch. And there were 6 members in my group. It was me and my boyfriend at the time, his name was Rich. Matt and Laura were friends of Rich's, they were there. Ailey and Dave and a friend of his, I think he was from Russia, he was a foreign guy, was with us. So we each had our own kind of little group. It was Dave and his friend, Matt and Laura, and Rich and I. And we all went out there together in October of 2006 and camped at the south border of the ranch, which is now Space Wolf Research, is that what it's called now, Space Wolf? And it's owned by an individual by the name of Ryan Burns. But at the time it wasn't. Back then it wasn't owned by him. We didn't ask permission to camp on that property either, we just did. So we set up, backtracking, when we decided to go, we all drove out together. And we got pulled over no less than twice, I believe it was twice, on the way out there. We weren't speeding. We were all dressed in black because we wanted to be hidden, in the night. We didn't want people to know we were out there. We had pistol cases, we had equipment, and the officers that pulled us over said, where are you going? And they're like, oh, we're just, going to Roosevelt or whatever we said. And they didn't ask to look at anything or anything, but they stopped us twice. There was no speeding, there was no traffic infraction. So that was the first kind of thing I'm like, do they know we're coming? Does somebody know that we're going out there? Like my mind just started racing with all these conspiracy theories. So when we got there, we set up camp. Like I said, it's Space Wolf. And then this is where the stories diverge. And there are several people here that have heard the version of this story from different people who were there. And I'll just say, I respect their version. This is what happened to me, this is what I observed. And it may conflict with what other people believe happened, but I truly believe that blowing things out of proportion or making things up does me no justice. It doesn't help me learn anything, it doesn't help anybody else, it doesn't impress anything. So this is what happened to me. When I was dating Rich, he was into what he called chaos magic, where he would try to invoke things to happen. So using black magic, witchcraft, he used sigils or artwork to try to open things, to try to cause chaos and pain and hurt. And he told me he was going to do this with his friend, and they were going to kind of climb over the little border onto ranch property and etch these sigils into the ground, and I wanted no part of it. So I'm not doing that. I absolutely will not be a part of that. And I was really, really uncomfortable. But they wanted to do it. They thought, they'd heard stories of people going out on the ranch and meditating and things happening, or trying to disturb the ground and things happening. So he thought he could go out and get whatever activity it was to happen to us if he did some sort of ceremony on the ranch. So they did that. I don't know what they did. I found out later, what symbols and stuff they used, but I wouldn't show them to anyone because I don't want anybody else to try to attempt that. But he performed this ritual, and I just thought nothing of it. But I wasn't part of it. So we set up a sky watch, and I apologize. This is 15 years ago, and I've tried to get photos from people, and I just was there to experience it. So I didn't take photos or video. I was just there. Other people had night vision and cameras and stuff. But I think a lot of people are hesitant to share that kind of thing, especially now for some reason. But we set up camp, we started watching the sky, and we were facing Homestead 1, because there's the 3 homesteads, the main homesteads on the ranch, and we were focusing from the south on Homestead 1. Some versions of the story say that weird lights showed up right in front of us. That was not my experience. What I saw above Homestead 1 was strange blue lights moving or kind of erratically over the old homestead, over the house, from a distance. They did not approach me, and I just watched them. I was like, this is fantastic. We've only been here a couple hours, and now we're seeing abnormal lights above the homestead. Everyone else said they were seeing them, and so we just kept watching, and my nerves started to get a little on edge. I felt like, and people, they laughed at the panel when they said that, they referred to the ranch as the ranch did it. Well, the ranch knew we were there. And you know how you know when somebody's staring at you and you turn and they're looking at you? It just felt like, okay, they did know we were coming because of that. So we watched the lights. It didn't last very long. I would say maybe 2 to 3 minutes at most. And then we started focusing our attention on Homestead 2. And this actually, Homestead 2 happened before this part, but I'll go ahead and tell you this. When me and my boyfriend were just sitting watching over the property, I looked back behind I drove in a Suzu Rodeo at the time, and I looked back behind my truck and there was a figure, again, tall, shadowy figure behind my truck, just standing there. And I said, Rich, are you seeing this? And he's like, yeah. I mean, he was laser focused on this thing, and it kind of moved, like it recognized that we were looking at it. And what I saw was just the figure. What Rich told me he saw was the same figure, but it had little things flying off of it and coming back into it. If you want to see a picture of that, Ryan Skinner has that exact picture that Rich drew on one of his book covers, so you can stop by and look at that. But because Rich drew it later, but he said he saw these things flying off of it, and I remember him being so laser focused on whatever this thing was. I wasn't really that scared because it wasn't it just was standing there. I didn't see what he saw, and then all of a sudden he grabbed his face and just like he was jolted, like something had hit him in the face or something. And I said, what happened? And he said, it went into my head. One of those things went into my head, up my nose. I was like, what? Like immediately, I was like, I'm not seeing that. What do you mean? And he's like, it went into my nose. And I was like, well, maybe you should go in the tent, lay down. Like I didn't know what to say, but I didn't see what he was seeing. And then my brain started thinking, well, that might have something to do with the fact that I wasn't part of whatever ritual was done. That's why I didn't see that. And I can't prove any of that, but like I said, it was never my intent to prove anything, but that kind of jolted me that he was grabbing his face, and it was a real jerk reaction. It wasn't like he just faked it, like, oh, you know, it was like he just froze up and grabbed his face, and he was obviously in pain. And so I didn't really know what to say. So we just kind of continued watching the sky. And the entire time he was complaining of, you know, headaches or some pain in his face. And he saw it differently. I learned later that other people in the group had different experiences. The one that we did share, it was a clear night. There was no clouds in the sky whatsoever. It was in October. And we were looking at the sky, and right above us, I mean directly above us, probably a space of 300 feet, the sky was completely blacked out in like a rectangle shape. Not triangle, not circular, just blacked out. There was no stars, but stars all around it. And then we started hearing a whirring noise, like that it kind of went back and forth. But it was right above us. It wasn't moving, but we heard a noise. And so we're focusing on this big blacked out space. And then we start having emotional shifts with each other. Rich started getting angry at me. I started getting angry at other people. We started cursing at each other, and then the next minute we were laughing with each other. The next minute we were exhausted. The next minute we all wanted to get up and hike the ridge. Like it was insane. I've never experienced an emotional shift like that. All while this thing, whatever it was, this blackness above us was above. The blacked out part, the rectangular, just disappeared. It didn't fly off. Just the stars just reappeared in that space. We didn't hear anything. We didn't see anything else with that. It just wasn't there anymore. So we started focusing again on Homestead 2, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen the movie Predator, that mirage sort of liquidy. It's so hard to explain, but that's the closest thing I can tell you what it looked like over Homestead 2, and it just distorted what we were looking at through, whether it was through our night vision, whether we were just looking at it. This mirage thing just kept happening in front of Homestead 2. That lasted a good 5 minutes, and when you think about it, 5 minutes is a really long time when you're seeing something like that. And Homestead 2, for some reason, Homestead 2 just freaked me out just to look at, even from a distance back then. Homestead 3 just up and disappeared. It was just gone. We focused on it, we'd seen everything that was out there, and then all of a sudden it was just replaced with blank land. Like it just was erased, completely erased or photoshopped out of the picture. And that was a little disheartening. The random shifts of emotion happened all through the night, really, until we decided to call it a night. People that were with me, and I did not see this, I think Ryan probably has more information on this part of it than I do, but they said they had seen a large bird, like something that was like pterodactyl-like size-wise, I think, just something enormously big in the sky. I didn't experience that. Again, I don't know why I didn't experience that, but I didn't. We all started feeling pressured, like we were being watched from every angle, and in some ways we were, because the locals by then knew we were there, and they didn't like it. So we had people driving in their trucks, honking, like, you need to leave, you need to get out of here. We didn't, we stayed, but we were being watched, whether by the ranch, by other people, or by both. When we decided to finally retire to our tents for the night, this is when it gets really strange, at least to me. I shared a tent with my boyfriend, and Dave shared a tent with his friend, and then Matt and Laura had their own. So we were all in our own separate little camps. And we were so exhausted, I think we had stayed up until like 3 or 4 in the morning. And so I went to bed, took off my boots that I had on, and I went to bed. And I remember waking up the next morning in a fetal position at the bottom of my sleeping bag, which I don't sleep like that. I don't like to have anything on my face. That would have freaked me out. But I was in the bottom of my bag, and Rich had gotten someone, I can't remember if it was Dave or Matt, but they were physically shaking me, like, April, wake up. And I jolted awake and said, what's the matter? And they're like, where did you go? What are you talking about? I didn't go anywhere. Right here. No, where did you go? I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought they were playing a prank on me. And they said, no, you were gone for 90 minutes in the middle of the night. They went, oh, nobody thought to come and look for me? Like, hello? He's like, well, and they said, well, we were super tired. We thought maybe you got up to just use the restroom or whatever, and that you would make your way back to the tent. I'm not easily scared. I mean, I camp by myself all the time, so that wouldn't have frightened me to go out in the dark if I needed to use the restroom, or I didn't take anything with me. And I went and I hiked for hours out on that ridge, and it was like I had energy that was boundless. I could do whatever. I could climb steep stuff, we climbed all over that. And there came a point where everybody just kind of stopped to get some rest, and I was pushing, let's go, let's keep going, let's hike this thing, this is so cool. And we did see something. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was an animal, I don't know what it was, but we saw something, I guess, running through the rocks on the ridge. And I didn't see the cryptid wolf or any of that stuff, but other people in my group, I think they reported seeing something more detailed than that. But we all did witness something running. It could have been res dogs. That could very well have been, something that, but they were all freaked out by it. So we couldn't identify, we couldn't agree on what that was. So we packed up from our hike and we went home. And this is like the strangest thing of the whole thing. It was months later, probably 2 or 3 months later, I was in Texas in a Walmart with my babies, my little girls, in their double stroller buying groceries. And 2 men who I thought looked like Mormon missionaries approached me. They didn't have tags, but they had the dress shirt, and the slacks, and they said, are you able to slaughter? And doing ghost stuff, sometimes people will see me and go, are you, And I said, yeah. And they looked right at me and said, do not ever go back to the ranch. Ever. And I was so shocked that I put myself between me and my kids, because I didn't know who these people were. And I said, what would you talk about, like what? And don't ever go back to it. They never said Skinwalker Ranch. They just said, never, we know you were there, never go back. And this was at the time that Bigelow owned it. So my mind was going crazy. Did he send people after me? Did the gut, like, what's happening? But I met up with my ex-boyfriend after that. After we'd broken up, I'd broken up with him because I wasn't into the dark stuff. And he sat me down at a restaurant and he said, I have brain cancer. And he found out after that thing had flown into his face. He said, April, this is going to kill me. I regret it. It's because of what I did on the ranch. It's because of what I did. I disrespected it, I provoked it, and it's going to kill me. And it ultimately did. He believed it was I can't prove to you the ranch did that to him, but he was regretful, he was very sorrowful, and when he met up with me, he expressed, concerned that if I ever did go back, I wasn't disrespectful, but he just was concerned about my well-being. And I never had any intention to go back until I did. And that's all I can share with you right now. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Can I take questions? Do we have time for that, or are we running late? Late? Okay. Just come and ask me questions if you have any.